Oh wow, I seem to have 4 subscribers. Yes, I'm sorry about the technical issues earlier with Sam Samuels. For some reason, my avatar couldn't be displayed, but I have sorted it out now. I wanted to announce my forthcoming stream with Khalid Safir on Monday at 7 p.m. on it's a bit of a naughty question. Are we slaves to Jews? And I'm so pleased with the question that I'm giving you a preview of it now. I'm hoping to develop my ideas as I express them to you. And on the question of slavery, which you might have noticed is one of my hot topics of the season. So, slavery means being owned by somebody, and it is a bit like being a pet, I suppose. You, your whole purpose is dedicated to pleasing your master, who will feed and accommodate you. And I'm reminded of how some people might say that when they die, they would like, after they die, what am I saying? They would like in their afterlife to be a pampered cat. So, this is a lifestyle that I think many might like. You go from room to room, you are fed, you are kept in luxurious surroundings, you are petted or patted or both. People notice you and say, what a cute little kitty you are, and how beautiful you are, and pick you up and cuddle you and praise you and look at your the features of your pedigree, your eyes, your tail, your all these things. I think a lot of humans would give their eye teeth to be admired in this way, in the way some animals are treated, particularly cats. Dogs, not so much for some reason, although they can have very endearing qualities and expressions, and they have a huge variety of characteristics. Now, on the question of slavery, obviously, the question that Khalid was proposing to ask, are we the slave of Jews, is an intriguing one, because clearly anti-Semitism is fueled by the fact that a lot of people resent being the slave of Jews, because in any romantic attachment, we might sometimes think, oh, I would be your slave. Nothing would make me happier than for me to be your slave and to serve you all my days. But of course it would be horrid to be in this state of subjugation, if it were somebody we hated. So as you can imagine, with relationships gone wrong, such as marriage, what might have been once upon a time a delightful ownership becomes a resented condition of slavery that you wish to escape from. So back to the question of slavery. If God exists, then we are all his slaves, because the whole narrative of the Abrahamic God is that he created the universe and all within it, and therefore he owns everything within it, including humans. Are we to think of ourselves as the slaves of God? I mean, would it be easier? I think that is a question. Um, and I know there's some debate on whether we are the servants or the slaves of God if God exists. Um, but I think it's just easier to think of the state of being a slave, because then it becomes easier to understand our role. Considering that the entire narrative of the Abrahamic God is that he knows our hearts and minds, and he knows our thoughts, and therefore when our minds wander and think of things we shouldn't think of, he has the ability to detect hidden idolatry. Not that hidden idolatry is undetectable to mere mortals such as myself. I'm saying that any display of hypocrisy is by definition a display of hidden idolatry. And hidden idolatry is not following your religious principles, not acting as your religious principles and religious values would let me try again. Hidden idolatry is revealed through hypocrisy, and hypocrisy is displayed when a person who is supposed to believe in God gives irrational and irrelevant reasons for not following his religious principles. And not doing so is ipso facto hidden idolatry, and it's and could if not repented from, end the hypocrite up in hell. So if it is the case that God is capable of detecting hidden idolatry, irrational and irrelevant reasons not to follow our religious principles, then we are his slaves, surely, if he can read our minds. And he does tell us things like, who we can and can't have sex with. So if he is saying, if he's making such demands of us, then he is, in fact, taking on the role of a slave. Sorry, a slave owner. And so back to Khalid's question of, are we the slave of Jews? I mean, obviously we're not, because slavery has been outlawed. I mean, we can't even be the slaves of each other, let alone Jews. Why is this question even asked? I think it is this sense every time a Gentile thinks of Jews that they are that Jews are above them, and because they are chosen by God. But there's nothing in the rules that say we have to treat them better than Gentiles. But even anti-Semites treat Jews better than Gentiles, because in a way they they acknowledge that Jews have the highest status over them by being, a perpetrator of some conspiracy. So it's always a case that in a situation of a criminal and a victim, the victim is always lower status than the perpetrator until he is brought to justice. This is it's just logical and inescapable. So if you're saying somebody did something bad to you, you're saying you're the victim, and unless the perpetrator is brought to justice, the perpetrator will be deemed to be higher status. So when Gentiles blame Jews for everything, a lot of them don't realise that they are raising Jews in status over them. And I think this could be cleared up when we finally understand our place in God's universe, if he does indeed exist. Because if you think of Jews and Gentiles as being both God's slaves, then you're not owned by Jews, unless slavery is reintroduced and there will be slaves and there will be owners. But there's no reason why Jews can't be slaves, or that Gentiles can't own Jewish slaves, or that Jews can't own Gentile slaves. So whether you're higher or lower status depends on other kinds of things other than the fact that you are a Jew or Gentile, because the entire the entire purpose of believing in God is that you expect to be, through obeying his laws, going to the better place in your afterlife, whether you be Jew or Gentile. And therefore, Jews don't actually get a better deal. I mean, well, they may get a better deal in this life, in the sense that all these Gentiles envy them. But if you look at it logically and according to Scripture, you will find that Jews have to endure a stricter regime, in that the punishments that they attract for doing things that are not even illegal for Gentiles is death, such as breaking the Sabbath. And you will also notice that the Torah has 36 capital offences, while the Quran hardly mentions a death penalty at all. So by any standards, if you're going strictly by Scripture, Gentiles have an easier ride. And Jews even say that Gentiles just need to follow their rules and they'll get to heaven. And this is also confirmed in the Quran. If you follow God's laws, you get to heaven. Now, the interesting thing about the Quran is that it says hypocrites who call themselves Muslims are cursed by God and end up in hell. It doesn't say anything like this in the Torah, I don't think. I don't think the Torah mentions anything called hidden idolatry. In all my years of listening to rabbis, they don't talk about hidden idolatry at all. But open idolatry, about bowing before idols for Jews, means death. So what does this mean? You see, the position is a bit confused, because according to the Noahide laws, idolatry and blasphemy is forbidden, and this prohibition is also repeated in the Ten Commandments. So if the penalty for idolatry and blasphemy for Jews is death, Gentiles also get it in the neck if they are living in a Torah theocracy run by rabbis. the thing is, it's also theoretical. I mean, we already know that, I mean, not even rabbis want to be run by other rabbis, and that there's something very frightening about living in a Torah theocracy with 36 capital offences, one of which includes breaking the Sabbath and being a drunk and disobedient son. Many people would have been executed, twice over, 3 times over for, in one lifetime. So these penalties are very, very harsh and not to be envied. And if Gentiles put themselves into a position of not envying the Jew, then there would be a lot less hatred of them. So, and also I think Gentiles instinctively think, oh, Jews are so clever, they're so cunning, they always have one over us. And I'm afraid this is not my experience. They flee from me, they won't answer my questions, and I know they have no answer because when I ask them how they are so sure that Islam is a fake religion and why they are so sure that Gentiles would not get their own revelation from the same Abrahamic God, they have no answer. All they can do is insist that the Torah is the first revelation. And I thought, well, what about the final revelation? Surely the final edition of any document is more authoritative than the first. And I don't think they can argue around the fact that the Quran is less restrictive and is still being used in a number of theocracies across the world. Let me see if I can remember them. Afghanistan, Iran, Mauritania, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Sudan. So there's 6 of them. So there are 6 theocracies in the world, and there is a 7th one, and that's the Vatican, but that doesn't really count because we know it's just a fake thing, and nobody really follows it, and the Pope doesn't really have any power. So really, the only functioning theocracy is Islam. And we go, okay, I'm wandering off the point, and it is that are Gentiles the slaves of Jews? And I'm saying, no, you can't call yourself a slave to Jews just because you think, they always have one over us. And you can't quite say why. I mean, so many of the accusations are so ridiculous that I can't help thinking the reason why Jews don't even dignify the accusation with an answer is because it sounds like a joke to accuse them of everything, and so they don't really bother denying any of the charges. I mean, it would be as if I said to you, prove to me that you didn't kill and steal and rape so and so and such a day. And you know that, well, unless you had an alibi, you wouldn't be able to prove that you didn't commit all those crimes on, at the time mentioned. So it's really a question of the burden of proof. I mean, are you expected to prove your innocence, or is the prosecution expected to prove your guilt? And it is horrifying to think that once upon a time, the accused was supposed to prove his innocence. But thank goodness the rules of natural justice have advanced. But we may be forgetting all kinds of rules that protect the defendant in our totalitarian times, where the rule of law is all but disappearing. The rule of law being the desire to follow the law, follow the rules just because they are the rules. So I return to the subject of whether we are the slaves or servants of God, and I'm saying if God exists, then we are the slaves of God. Is it better to know or not know that we are the slaves of God? I think it is better to know. But then it presupposes our conclusion, if we ever make it in our lifetimes, whether God exists. So, obviously if he exists and we are his slaves, we won't know. But we know the name of the game is to prove ourselves worthy of going to the better place in the afterlife, and that must mean being able to distinguish between good and evil, and the way to distinguish between good and evil is to obey God's laws, and then if you do that, you'll be all right. And this is a very simple system, and I think if more people decided to believe, we can only decide to believe, nobody can force us to believe, we would actually be happier people, because then a lot of things would make more sense. And I've been saying so many times already that it's really a very ingenious system of self-correction. So here are the following propositions. If suffering is punishment for sin, then first proposition, suffering is punishment for sin. Second proposition, everything that has happened was meant to happen, which is another way of saying we live in the best of all possible worlds, and this is an idea by Leibniz, who said that this world that we live in is the only possible world that we could be living in, because a loving God created the best possible universe for us to live in, to test our worthiness to go to the better place in the afterlife. But don't you agree that if we tried, if we obeyed these laws, the effect of that would be that we would be closer to heaven on earth if we get back our communities, our law and order, our common sense, which is really not that common at all, and we would be living in a world where things make sense, when the best people, the elites, are the ones governing us, and we don't complain because we think they're doing a good job and they deserve to be governing us, and we have hope for the future because we believe our society to be governed well and rationally. is a spiritual desire that is so important. So, and I think a lot of people don't see this state of mind that I think a lot of people want to get. They want to feel that their world makes sense. They want to know that their lives have meaning. And it is this spiritual comfort that believing in God would give them. And it would be so simple for the government to confer this on the people, should they choose. There are many ways of doing it, and I know the way. I know the ways. And I suppose it's just part of the madness of the world that nobody wants to talk about these things. So I don't want to talk too long. I don't want to say all the things now that I will be saying on Monday. Oh, well, there's 4 people. So Christine Ramsey is saying her usual Islamophobic things. You see, Christine, you need to understand this view of Leibniz about that we live in the best of all possible worlds, and that everything that ever happened was meant to happen. So I'm afraid the Muslims were meant to come because you stopped being Catholic, and then you became Anglican, and then you stopped being Anglican. You didn't believe in any of the nonsense, and then you stopped practicing marriage, and your birth rate lowered, and then it made immigration the short-term solution, to which your government has become addicted. So that was what happened. So unless you correct all the things that brought you to this pretty pass, you won't be able to move on. So Christine Ramsey continues to moan there is no Hindu phobia, no Sikhophobia or Buddhist phobia in the West for obvious reasons. No, of course not, because they are less powerful religions that you can safely dismiss. You can think, oh, these Hindus are so cute with their Diwali and their festival of lights, and we do like their curries. And Sikhophobia, they're these men who carry daggers and wear turbans, and sometimes they don't even bother. And the Saffron Road Buddhist monk, they're not threatening at all, because I'm afraid these people don't really have many principles that they are known to adhere to. So that, I think, is the problem. No, it's not the problem. The situation is that you do not fear the weaker religions, the disorganized religions, the non-Abrahamic religions, the Eastern religions, because they do not threaten you. You have colonized these countries, so you're not scared. You have also colonized Muslim countries and infected them with democracy, and I don't think they will actually be able to govern themselves properly until they become a one-party state. And I will keep going on about this because this is obviously the only way, and I will keep talking about it in relation to the Russians. I don't know why some people treat Dugin as if he were, evil incarnate. I don't think he has the whole picture. He still doesn't get it about the one-party state. He goes on about liberalism And I thought, well, if I were him, I would be saying, I'm going to take Russia back into the times when we had a one-party state. And he's not even saying anything like that. So I don't think he quite dares. Or has completely analysed the situation properly. You can't actually get anything done without becoming a one-party state. And I'll keep saying that. I'll also go on about licensed brothels and the reintroduction of slavery. I'm sorry about that, but that was how things worked in the olden days. And we have reduced ourselves to this state, and it's better late than never to understand what brought us to this pretty pass. Evelyn for You says, it seems to me a majority of people in all the religions have a common moral set of standards and get along with each other, given things are well with the government. Yes, the 5 world religions that you have heard of are intended primarily to maintain the practice of marriage, the eugenic practice of marriage, and it is only through making couples understand that they have to choose once and choose young and stick with their choice that we can have stable families in which to rear the next generation who will become productive members of society. Because without the two marriage partners, there will be no families. And if you don't have families, you will have, well, crazy, stupid, unproductive people who will be a burden on the state. And I'm afraid slavery needs to be reintroduced because that's the only way to efficiently deal with people who have reduced themselves to poverty and need somebody to give them a roof over their heads and food in their belly, provided they are able to make themselves useful to that person, prepared to accommodate and feed them. Christine Ramsey asks why I don't go back to Malaysia and open a brothel. Well, it's not my thing, but I'm saying, the principle of the thing is that men who can't find wives should be able to get their rocks off somewhere, but this woman must not be a girlfriend, because that will confuse everyone and distract men and women from marrying. It will, allowing a culture of fornication will make men and women delay marriage, and this will have consequences for the birth rate. I think the Chinese are they're having the same problem, but I think they're going to do something about it. Unlike the West, they're just not going to let it slide or look the other way and pretend it's not happening. You really have to understand how the Chinese chose Marxism. I mean, okay, I don't pretend to have read books about it, but this must be why they decided on Marxism in I guess it was 1911 when the Qing dynasty fell. It must have been a tremendous shock to them because they thought they were riding high and that they were, the Middle Kingdom, and they were so ancient and wonderful, etc. Until the British turned the gunboats on them and made themselves comfortable in Shanghai and in other parts of China. But the point was that their system of imperial rule had crashed and burned, and they needed to find something better. And they thought, well, they could have, become Nazis. Well, they couldn't have become Nazis. They could have been, fascists, but fascism hadn't really started at the time, I suppose. And the biggest idea around was communism. And because communism, it's quite clever in a way, Marx's historical materialism or dialectic materialism. You can't really refute it. It is a truism that people will divide themselves into opposing camps of ideology and fight each other. And hopefully, eventually, you will get to a workers' paradise when somebody works out how to fairly distribute resources so that society is stable. And I'm saying the Quran is very firm about treating people fairly, about treating the poor well, and charity, etc. And also it has principles of trade, commerce, being honest, and the banning of usury. So I think if followed properly, we would get ourselves a more stable economy, and the banning of usury would prevent income inequalities, which would cause social divisions. So it seems really a very sensible idea, and I think we should give it a go. And anyway, nobody's got a better idea. So, I mean, really, you haven't got a better idea. Am I quiet? I think you can hear me, can't you? Let me just check my settings. Is this better? Am I clearer? Christine Ramsey has very, very romantic ideas about me. I don't mind. Is the sound better now? Okay, I will go now, and I will go after I have summed up what I thought I was saying, and I'm saying it's a question of attitude. We should, and once we have the right attitude, everything will turn out right, and we won't be so upset with each other anymore, particularly Gentiles who've always envied Jews. I wouldn't envy Jews if I were you. I'd be pleased not to be a Jew because they get punished more, even though they have a higher status, and they can keep their higher status as far as I'm concerned. It's not like we're required to respect them or treat them better, or let them in, let them go first or anything like that. There's nothing written in the legislation that says Jews can go first. Now, I'm sure some of you will be thinking, oh, but they get to call us Nazis, but actually, I think Gentiles can call each other Nazis and annoy each other that way. And we also know that Jews call each other Nazis because they have become as silly as we have. I know it's a common anti-Semitic trope to say that Jews are corrupted our morals, but really it seems more likely to me that Gentiles have corrupted Jewish morals. And they've completely lost their identity, and they're talking nonsense and being liberal, and have lost their identity. So I don't know. I suppose we can argue until the cows come home about who did what to whom, but if both Gentiles and Jews accepted that they are both the slaves of God, then they would treat each other better and not get hurt so much, and the best way of resolving the matter would be, of course, that Jews submit to Sharia in Israel, which is what Hamas demands. So Hamas is basically saying, we're going to carry on killing Jews until they submit to Sharia, as is stated in the Hamas Charter. And if Israelis adopted secular Quranism with Israeli characteristics, they could be doing that and actually making their governments better, and also causing America to adopt secular Quranism with American characteristics if the Israelis do. And then after America adopts it, the rest of the West will, and even the other parts of the world. So in this way, I think Jews can be very helpful to Gentiles, and they should be thinking of doing things in this way. And I hope those of you who understand what I'm saying will feel yourselves able to repeat what I have said to others, in the hope of getting the message through to Jews. Thank you all for your attention.